Good afternoon. Right now, we open our first meeting of La Desbandá. This is our first international meeting. We would like to say hello to everybody here in the audience and those of you who are absent or are at home. And we've had to do it this way because the current conditions of this pandemic have obliged us to organize in a safe way this first meeting, respecting and following all the instructions that we have been given by the health system. So we would like to say hello to all of those who are following us from home. And without further ado, well, I wanted to introduce this first international meeting. What is our main aim from our association, La Desbandá? Well, our aim is basically to get closer to the truth and to what we know right now about what happened more than 3 years ago with the massacre of the Malaga-Almería road. So we wanted to get closer to that historical event because we've been working, we've been following the historical memory. Well, one of the biggest genocides in this country. We've been doing it for more than 15 years and 5 years focusing on this with La Desbandá. Our main objective, since we decided to organize this first summit, our idea was to search for the truth, because we have some truth, and some of us would say that we have a good amount of knowledge of what happened in those days of the month of February of the year 1937. But there's still a lot to know, and this is our main challenge. So we decided to reach to be the closest to the truth which has been carried out. There have been many historians and archaeologists who've been working on it, but we have to continue and we have to support them, and because we need to know more about this. So one of the main objectives of this first meeting was to organize the first international conference in 2 years to continue with this research and to be able to have results and being able to continue offering the truth that we're searching for. In this background, with this background, we're going to put on the table all those questions that we have to ask ourselves on this scape. So what is the matter of the topic? What is the state of the question here? Also, we want to know more aspects which are linked to this scape. For example, women and La Desbandá, the scape. Also, what we nowadays think it's very important, which is the anti-fascism. We have to keep on working in that line. We need to know or put on the table what other scapes are taking place in the world due to wars, things that are happening in the world, in Middle East, etc. So our objective is develop and draw some conclusions, and to finish at the end of the afternoon and tomorrow reach with some conclusions and declaration of what we are, what is our main objective with this thing, and also the next conference that we want to organize in 2 years. But we do not only want to just get to know the truth. We also would like to ask for justice for those thousands of victims that are on the road. We want to ask for some kind of moral and repair for that. Within the roundtables that we will have tomorrow, we also need to introduce a network of memory paths at the level of Spain. Those paths where tragical events have taken place, with things that are worth remembering. We want to remember them walking those paths, and the most significant one would be the path of La Desbandá, the escape, which was one of the most cruel ones. On the other hand, another objective for us would be to take to the classrooms of this country memory. We know that historical memory is not being dealt with in a dignified way. So this is our commitment to create this didactic unit that can reach all classrooms in this country for the truth to be known, so that those massacres and exile and tragical events, those who led to the loss of freedom, democracy in 1936 in this country. So this is our first meeting, and at the end of it, we wanted to present the new edition of our integrated walk in February, and from the 6th to the 12th of February. This march will be all along this road of death from Malaga to Almeria. Tomorrow, and I will introduce now to all of them, the Secretary of State of Memory, Mr. Martinez. We also want to introduce you a video or a documentary which was unedited on freedom, and that offers more knowledge of this topic. And with all of this, we want to give way to the opening of these meetings, starting with our friend Rafael Quirosa, the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Almeria. He's going to address us through the video conference.
Buenas tardes, espero que se oiga bien.
Good afternoon. I hope you can
lamento
hear me
no estar hoy presencialmente allí
I'm sorry for not being there today with all of you, but I hope that technology will allow us to get really close through the First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event for having been invited to take part in the international event La Desbandá 2020. This reminds me of the first few years of my first few years of research on the Civil War. And so I always feel very close to the dealing with these topics. I'd like to thank Rafael Morales and José Montes, the people who have been most in touch with, but of course the rest of the organizers who have made this possible in the chat and the social networks, and so thanks to the speakers for participating in this meeting, this forum. It's a very good opportunity to share the table with colleagues like Fernando Martinez, and I can't see the media very clearly, but I think he's there. And also I can have the opportunity of getting introduced to Mr. Heinz Baum,
Aunque mañana
I'm
participo,
also
como
the
se puede ver en el
moderator
programa, en una de las
of the
mesas de
roundtable.
debate,
I will
supongo
take
que he
part
sido
in one
invitado
of
a
the
participar en esta sesión
tables
inaugural
for
por
tomorrow,
mi
but I was
actual condición de
invited
decano de la
for
Facultad de
this in this
Humanidades y
opening
también como
session
responsable del grupo
as
de
a dean
investigación
of the
que dirijo en la
faculty and
universidad, que
the
se ha dedicado
representative of
en
the
mucho de su
research group
estudio a estudiar
of the
la etapa
university,
histórica en la
which
que
has
se
been working
centra
on the
el
historical
evento que hoy se inaugura, ¿no? Por tanto,
stage
entiendo que mi
this
intervención debe
event
estar
is dealing
presidida
with.
por
So
ese
I
espíritu
understand that
universitario que nunca hay
we
que
have to
olvidar, que es el
not
vinculado a la
forget the
investigación y al
university spirit,
conocimiento.
which is very
Y
much
más en
linked
concreto,
to
entiendo que
knowledge.
debemos tener muy presente
And we
la
also have
importancia
to
del rigor
have
histórico,
the
que nuestro
importance
pasado
of
sea comprendido por
historical
las
rigor
generaciones
so that the
actuales y
past
la
is
venera.
understood
Algo que
by
puede parecer
current
muy obvio,
generations and
pero que
coming
la realidad
generations, something which seems
contrastada día
very
a día
obvious,
nos hace
but
ver que no
we've
es
seen
así,
that
que no
in
se reconoce
reality
ese
that is
pasado,
not
que no se
actually
comprende
happening, that
ni por
past
las
is not
generaciones actuales y
known,
me temo que
understood
mucho menos por las
by
venideras si
current
no hacemos
generations, and
actividades
of
como la que
course,
hoy
even
se
worse,
inaugura.
by
De Málaga en febrero de
generations. This came from
1937 y
Malaga
el
in
trayecto de
February
la población a
1937,
través de la
and
carretera
this
hacia Almería
path
no creo que
through the road
defina
of
nada nuevo si
Almería,
lo defino,
that doesn't,
si lo
I wouldn't say
considero como una
something new
auténtica tragedia.
if I say that this is
Quizá y
a
quizás sí,
real
quizás fue la
tragedy.
mayor catástrofe humana
Maybe
que
the
afectó
most
a la población civil en toda la guerra
important
de
tragedy that
1936.
affected the
Es
civil
verdad que hay
population in the whole of
todavía
the war.
dificultades, ha habido y sigue habiendo todavía
We've had
dificultades para conocer la
difficulties
magnitud de
to
la
get to
tragedia.
know the
Nunca,
magnitude of the
y no ser
tragedy.
fatalista es ser
Never,
realista,
and this
nunca
has not
sabremos con
been
exactitud ni los que
fatalist, but
marcharon
we
por
will
esa
never know
carretera, ni los
exactly
que
how many
fueron
people
heridos, ni
walked
los que
that road
desaparecieron, ni los
and
que
how many people
murieron.
were
Nunca
injured,
podemos
how many people
saberlo con
disappeared,
exactitud,
how many of them died.
lamentablemente.
We will
También es
never
verdad
be
que no es
able to
necesario, y lo he
have
dicho en muchas ocasiones,
all the
incrementar
information about it, but
artificialmente
I've
las
also
cifras
said that
para saber
it's not
de la
necessary to
importancia, de la
increase the
magnitud de lo
figures
acontecido, ¿no?
to get to know to
No
the
por echar más
magnitude
personas en la
of the
carretera o no por
tragedy,
hablar de más
because
muertes que no
not
están
because we talk
contrastadas,
about
con
more
eso se consigue
dead
incrementar
people,
lo que ya
we
de por
will
sí es
increase
una, como
what
digo,
is
una
actually
una
in
tragedia
fact
humana, ¿no?
already
Debemos ir,
an
y yo creo que
immense
esto
tragedy.
está en el
But
espíritu de esta actividad,
we
no debemos
shouldn't
consentir que se nieguen o que se minimicen
also
aquellos
accept
dramáticos hechos, como
the
ahora
process of
parece que
minimizing
en
those
parte se está queriendo
dramatic
hacer. Ya sabemos
events.
que el
That's something that
negacionismo es
it's
una
been
constante
done,
histórica, nunca
and
mejor
this
dicho, protagonizada por
negation is a
determinados
constant
sectores de
historically by
la sociedad.
sectors
Esto
of
no afecta solo al
society.
drama de la carretera
These do not
Málaga-Almería, no afecta
affect
solo a la
the
guerra
drama
civil, no afecta solo a nuestra historia, sino que es
this
patrimonio común
road from
de la
Malaga to
historia de la
Seville. It is a
humanidad. El
common
caso quizás más
heritage in the history
conocido
of
es el
humanity.
negacionismo, ¿no?, del
And we know
holocausto
that
nazi,
the
pero así
negation
podríamos
of
citar muchos
Nazi Holocaust
negacionismos
is another
que
example,
circulan.
examples
Uno
of
podía pensar que eso
negation,
ya era cosa del
when
pasado.
we could
Vemos
come to
que
think that that's
tesis que
something
se
from the
sostenían
past,
en los
but
años
we still
40 por
see
la propaganda
that
oficial,
in
hoy
the
son asumidas con
40s,
naturalidad
those
por
ideas
una
by the
parte
official
de la
propaganda
sociedad, o al menos una
still
parte de la información que llega
are still
a
assumed by
esta
a part
sociedad,
of the
incluyendo
society, or
también algunos
information
medios
and
de
reaching
comunicación. Por
society,
ello
including
entiendo que hay que
some
seguir
media
avanzando
as well.
también
So
en
I
en
understand
lo que podríamos definir
that
como la
we'll have to
socialización
continue
del
moving forward
conocimiento.
in the
Es
process of
decir, no solo
socialization of
que
knowledge.
investiguemos, no
So not
solo que
only
publiquemos, no solo que trabajemos, no solo que hagamos
researching,
actividades científicas,
publishing,
sino que
or
podamos
carrying
llegar a la
out
sociedad. Por
scientific
eso me ha gustado
activities, but
mucho
also
la idea
reaching
que
the
Rafael ha
society in general.
planteado de la unidad
That's why
didáctica, porque una forma
I
también
liked
de
a lot
llegar a los
this idea
jóvenes
of the
para que
didache
conozcan de una
when
manera
young,
fácil, en sentido que puedan
so that
comprender,
they
sin un
can
conocimiento previo
understand
muy exhaustivo, puedan
without a
comprender, ¿no?,
very
estos hechos del
specific
pasado, ¿no? Como también
previous knowledge,
es
but they
muy
can get to know
importante el
these facts
reconocimiento
from the
institucional.
past.
Por eso
Also,
no podemos dejar de
institutional
señalar con
recognition
satisfacción
is very
la
important.
presencia
We
de nuestro
cannot
secretario de Estado en la
say
sala, ¿no?
enough about for
Digamos que
having the
significa
Secretary of
un
State of
compromiso,
Democratic
¿no?,
Memory
muy
here.
claro,
That
como por
shows
otra
a clear
parte Fernando Martínez
commitment,
siempre ha tenido, ¿no?, con estas cuestiones. Pero ese
on this
reconocimiento institucional hay
topic.
que
But
lograr
this
que no solo quede en una
institutional
institución, como ahora
recognition,
mismo el gobierno de la
it
nación,
has to
sino que
become not
también los
only
gobiernos autonómicos, los gobiernos
a
provinciales,
small institution, but we need
los
not only
propios
by the
gobiernos
state, but
municipales,
also
pues
regional
sigan
and
tomando
local
conciencia de la
governments
importancia, ¿no?,
should
de este drama de nuestra
take
historia y de la necesidad de que se conozca y que no se olvide. olvide, ¿no?
take into
Creo que
account
aunque hay muchos
and give
aspectos, ¿no?, que se
importance to
pueden
this
tratar del punto de
tragedy.
vista
I know
histórico,
there are many aspects that
hay
can be dealt
algunos
with
por los
from
que no hemos
the
ido acercando en
historical
el
point of
pasado y
view,
podemos seguir
but there are
profundizando,
others that
como
we
es el
haven't
significado
dealt with in the past. For
de
example,
la
the meaning
desbandada
of
en la represión
la
franquista. Tiene
Desbandá,
que
the
olvidar
escape
que uno de los
in the
fundamentales que
repression by
llevó a los
Franco. That's one
ciudadanos
of
malagueños
the
y de otras
most
provincias que
important
salieron de Málaga aquel mes de febrero
points
del año
for the
37
citizens
era el
that
miedo a la
left
represión, lo que ya
Malaga,
había
that
pasado
fear
y conocían en
of
otros pueblos
repression, because
ocupados por los
they
rebeldes, ¿no?
knew it and
También,
they
y es una de
had
las
been
perspectivas
in
que se están
villages
abordando y
occupied
se van a seguir
by the
abordando,
rebels.
hay que
So
estudiar
another
el
aspect
fenómeno
is
conjunto
of the
¿no?, que
phenomenon
tienen
of
lugar en tierra de Franco Sur, en la
military
península ibérica en el
operations
contexto de la
that
guerra
took
y
place in
dentro
the
de ello
Iberian Peninsula in
especialmente
the
no
context
solo de
of
la
the war.
perspectiva militar, sino
So
también
not
por los efectos
only
que produjo
at the military
los
level, but also
bombardeos
the
aéreos
effects
o los
of
bombardeos navales,
their
¿no? El
bombing
problema político, yo mañana hablaré algo de
and
esto en mi intervención,
fleet
el problema político,
bombings as
que es
well.
algo también
The
fundamental, un
political
problema político que se
problem
puede
is
estudiar en el
significant
origen,
too.
es decir, en
We
la
can
situación en la que
study in
estaba
its
Málaga
origin
en febrero de 1937, pero
of
también
what
en
happened in
los efectos que
February
provoca la
1937,
llegada
but also
de
the
tantas
effects
miles de
of the
personas de
arrival
golpe
of so many people
a la ciudad de Almería y a la provincia de Almería, ¿no? Y
to the
cómo hay que
city and the
tener una
province
respuesta
of
política a
Almería,
esta
and
situación.
how we need to
Pero
have
si yo me
a
tuviera que quedar con
response to
algo
that
de lo que hay que
situation. But
abordar y
if I
seguir
had to
abordando a la hora de estudiar la
highlight
desbandada, es
something
sin
that we
duda
have to
las
deal is
consecuencias que
social
viven las
trauma
personas
of this,
que tienen
the
que transitar
consequences
por
of the
esa
people who
carretera
had
y
to
que tienen que
walk
pasar,
that road
digamos, la penuria
and
y
that
el
had
drama
to
de ver
go
cómo mueren sus
through the
compañeros, cómo
tragedy
se
of
quedan en el
seeing
camino y
their
sobre todo
colleagues
las dificultades que tienen luego
and family
para
members,
subsistir,
etc.,
¿no?
die,
En
and
definitiva,
the
desde la
difficulties that
perspectiva,
they're
digamos, podemos decir, historiográfica,
found.
yo no puedo otra cosa que defender la necesidad de un trabajo
I
exhaustivo, un
have to
trabajo
defend
muy
the need
riguroso
for
y con ello
a very
combatir la
specific and
manipulación
rigorous
partidista,
work.
política,
So
sectaria que en
avoiding
nuestra historia se
manipulation
puede hacer, venga de
that
donde
can
venga
be
esa
done
manipulación.
wherever it
Eso
comes
creo
from.
que es obligación de los historiadores.
This is the
También creo que
obligation of
tenemos que seguir
historians, of course,
contribuyendo a
and
desarrollar
we have to
proyectos
continue
rigurosos,
to
bien
contribute to
dirigidos,
developing
que coordinen
rigorous
lo ya
and
investigado
well-directed
y
projects that
completen
can
con aquellos
coordinate the
aspectos
ones
que
that
todavía
have
no
already
estén bien
been researched
estudiados. Y aquí
and
tenemos que
that deal
buscar el
with
apoyo
projects that
de
have
las
not yet been
instituciones para
studied. We
facilitar
need to look for the
esos trabajos
support of the
necesarios.
institutions to
Recientemente hemos visto cómo la Junta de Andalucía ha reducido
facilitate those
las
works.
cantidades previstas
The
para ayuda
regional
tanto a las
governments of
asociaciones
Andalusia
memorialistas
has
como en universidades,
quantities
de la
for
convocatoria de
university schools
2019 para la memoria
in the
democrática, ¿no?
call
Lo ha
of
dejado reducido, no sé si a una tercera
2019
parte o a menos,
for
¿no? Yo creo que con
this
eso poco se contribuye al
historical and
conocimiento de la
democratic
historia,
memory. That
pero en
doesn't
fin,
contribute
son
to the
responsabilidades que
knowledge of
competen a
history,
otros
but
y
well,
que son ellos los que
these are
tendrán que dar
responsibilities
respuesta
of
política
others,
de la
and they
cuestión
have
que hemos
to
planteado. Bien,
deal with this
ojalá, y termino,
criticism.
ojalá que muchos de estos
Well,
objetivos
hopefully,
que yo
many
he
of
querido
these
resumir en mi
objectives
breve
that I've wanted
intervención
to
puedan
sum
ser
up
logrados
in
o
my
por lo menos se pueda avanzar en
speech,
ello con
hopefully
la
we will
celebración de este
make
encuentro que hoy se
progress
inaugura.
with the
Reitero mi
holding of this
agradecimiento
forum
y mi
that is
satisfacción por estar
being
aquí esta
open
tarde, aunque
today.
sea
So
a través
thank
de
you
la
again
pantalla,
for being
con todos
here, even if
vosotros
it's
y todas
through the
vosotras.
screen, but thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to continue with the presentations. And before we continue, I wanted to thank the University of Almeria for because this event was going to take place there. But as you know, and as I said at the beginning, because of these COVID conditions, we couldn't hold this meeting at the University of Almeria. So we're really thankful for your cooperation, which will continue, of course, with La Desbandá, the future conference that we will organize when the time comes. And of course, again, thank you for being available and making it easy for us to work. Well, now Heinz Bierbaum, the representative of the European Left Party, he's going to address us some words from Brussels or Germany. I know he's in Europe, but I don't know exactly where he is. So he has the floor. Heinz Bierbaum. Thank you. Thank you for having invited me to this very important event. It is really important in the conditions that we have nowadays, which are very difficult because of the pandemic. For many years, we've paid homage to one of the most significant crimes that took place during the war in Spain. This is very current, actually. We have a very worrying situation in many parts of Europe and in the whole world. We've suffered an upsurge of the far right and fascist forces, and nationalism and racism are increasing. Left and other progressive forces have been attacked by these far right, and it's an international phenomenon that calls for an international answer. We have a global situation which is characterized by a high level of tension and military conflict. The geopolitics of the United States is addressed to the supremacy of these United States. They're using this COVID crisis to intensify their confrontation with China. For example, with the possible victory, well, we don't know, but with the possible victory or the possible not victory of Trump in these elections gives us some ray of hope, but we don't think that the change will be very radical. In my opinion, the comparison between conservative parties and organization of the far right and fascism organizations, for example, in the Popular Party, they have no problem of negotiating with Vox, which is follows these fascism and far right. In Germany, there is also a party is linked to the Conservative Party, and it's becoming more and more a far right party where there are fascist elements that have a more important role. Also, in Germany, a part of these conservative parties can cooperate politically with the far right, and that is a new situation. Meanwhile, in the past, this cooperation with these fascist groups and far-right groups was impossible. Conservative parties nowadays open the way to a cooperation with these kind of parties. And this is a very dangerous turn that has to be harshly criticized, and it has to be rejected, of course. On the hand, we have a lot of resistance in the United States. A movement, it's been born after the killing of George Floyd and other Afro-American people by the police. In a short time, this became a great social movement that was extended to the other states and also reached Europe. It's a symbol of the fight against racism. Which is compromised with the fight against all kinds of fascism. There is a party of the European left. It's supporting refugees and movements of support for migrants, popular movements, and solidarity as well. document, a good part of the population is very much committed with international solidarity and, you know, to support the oppressed. It is a democratic duty to fight against this far right wing. This left European party fights for a more social society, a fairer society, a more democratic society, a more peaceful one, and a more solidarious society. That's why we need radical change in politics that are different. One which goes against the neoliberal social and economic model, focusing not only on whether we can find solutions for the current crisis, but also with a long-term vision for the transformation of the economy toward the social and the ecological. As part of this European left, we've been promoting a, a document which is called how to get rid of the current crisis. It's true that this didn't start with the virus. It's a crisis of the capitalist system, but of course it's become worse with this pandemic. We're asking for measures in 5 areas. Local level can protect people. It is urgent to have a transformation of the economy towards the public, social, and ecological. The rights and democratic institutions cannot be questioned with the measures taken to fight the crisis. On the contrary, in difficult times like this ones, democracy rights have to be defended and fostered. This pandemic has to be taken as an opportunity to reduce military costs and in the help of the I'm sorry, but the sound didn't reach the interpretation properly. Yes, there is a new initiative for disarmament and for new kinds of policies. Because of the global dimension of the crisis, we have no other answer than international solidarity. This European left party is requiring immediate measures to fight this crisis and a radical change of politics in order to open for development of the society where people are at the core. The fight against racist politics and nationalist politics of this far right is one part. It's an integrated part of this policy, and according to the global situation, this fight is most needed than ever. It has to become international. I think that international solidarity has to play a very important role in this. In this context, this international meeting, La Desbandá, is of great importance. Although this year we're limited by the pandemic, still it's a very useful and very much needed event. It's a pillar and it's really significant in our fight against the upsurge of fascism and the fight in Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Heinz Beerbaum, because this he belongs to the European Left Party, and this has been working for many years. They've been supporting our work and our fight. So we have to thank them for that solidarity and that support. We're going to move on to the mayor, Antonio Bonilla. Well, I cannot say anything else, but thank you, and thank you for being available and for having open the gates of the city council and their facilities when well, we can all see that the circumstances made it very complicated to develop and hold this event in Almeria at the university. So beforehand, I wanted to say thank you, and we give him the floor. Well, okay, to you and everybody here. I'm sorry, but the sound is not reaching the interpreter properly. The work you're doing to keep this historical event alive and is very important. So I want to recognize the work that you're carrying out for this noble cause, for everybody to get to know what happened. Okay, I would like to thank the Secretary of State of Democratic Memory for being here. We know that it's part of their competence, but we know that the work done before as a professor and a researcher of the history of our background. Oops. For everybody here, this is a topic that is very interesting. And everybody here, also will Sergio, thank you very much. And also the Congress member Indalecio. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your presence and for supporting this cause. Professor Quirosa, the Dean of the Faculty of Almeria, said that the demonstrations had to be committed. And this is the second time that in this space, the collectivity, it is the second time we talk about this escape, this Desbandá. We talk about this part of humankind that affected hundreds and thousands of men, women, and children. Here we had an exhibition that was opened in Malaga, and we had this exhibition here in so it can time that we talk about this, and of course we feel very much connected to what happened in that horrible exodus from Malaga to Almeria, those 200 kilometers of horror, where the experts say that one of the biggest genocides of the civil war took place, and I'd say even the whole of the Iberian Peninsula. Well, we've known things, we want to know more. That is why we want to ask for what we consider to be fair, the historical knowledge of what happened. It is true, and we all know that in this case, this desire, this stubborn desire of just change the past and make it something close to fraud, to change the historical event that is a reality that we are living through. People like you, the Association of La Desbandá, we are asking for an objective and profound knowledge of everything that happened. So this is really important work. So we also want to have this reaching the classrooms, because we know that the next generations should know about this in history. And I am a public representative. I wanted to say too, to go to get over it and to get to know it, and also to offer training in the most noble attitudes. From Malaga to Almeria, this 340 national road, the municipality of Vicar, we had 10 kilometers, and we were the scenery for this tragedy, for this genocide that the citizens had to live through, a part of the population of Malaga, in that search for life and freedom to reach Almeria. So to all of you, thank you especially. Thank you to everybody for everything you're doing. Public administrations as well. And thank you and congratulations for everything you're doing. But all people, of goodwill can reach the necessary path with the main objective of dignifying those human beings which were the protagonists of this transit, this tragic transit, and this exodus of the road of death. And so all of you who are here and who are following us, congratulations and thank you for this. And from us, from Vicar, we want to generously offer to the benefit of human beings, so that history is not repeated. This, so that this history doesn't take place again. And that's all. Thank you from Vicar. We hope you will feel like you're at home, because our home is your home. Thank you. Thank you to the mayor, to the we wanted to say to the town hall and city council, thank them for the management and organization of this event. And to finish, we're going to have this opening session, and for the end of this opening session, we have here Don Fernando, the Secretary of State for Democratic Memory. And for us, it is an honor to have him here, because for time he's been supporting and cooperating with us, and he's going to address us, and he's going to talk about the main guidelines of the law of memory. And of course, I think I'm sorry, but the sound is not reaching the interpreter properly. because we still have to work for many years with these historical memory. I would like to give you the floor. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you so much for your words. Thank you for having welcomed us in this international event on La Desbandá, in this village of Villagat, which is always been defined by offering support to local cultural activities and all kinds of activities that promote the progress of villages and cities. Thank you, the whole team, for the organization of this, and I would like to thank specifically the organizers of this event. You've been working for a long time. This is not the first time that you do it. Well, you've done it in many occasions, and we have to remember here what happened in this transit from Malaga to Almeria, this road of death, promoting research on it to make it possible for citizens to raise their awareness on what happened in this escape, this kind of stampede from Malaga to Almeria. From in the year, and it is something that you've been working with together with the researchers, the universities of Malaga, Granada. We know about the research carried out already. And of course, we have to say that the Spanish government will continue to especially support this these ways of action. So I would like to bring some news, because yesterday I had the opportunity, the Congress, and I wanted to say it here in this session, from the government of Spain, we have decided, this Secretary of Democratic Memory, we have decided to promote a great exhibition on La Desbandá, a great exhibition that will take place next year. We're talking with the researchers, so that they're part of the scientific committee, which will make it easier for this exhibition to take place. This will have its expression in Malaga, and it will be a moving one. No, it will not stay in just one place. It will go through different cities, not only in Spain, but also Europe. So thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. Of course, I wanted to thank everybody and the words of Professor Quirosa, because we always learn from him. He was one of the pioneers in the studies of the Civil War. And of course, this is one of the key events that had an effect in history for Eastern and Western Andalusia and the whole of the Republican history and the exile. My studies, we also count on Rafael Colomina, Francisco Colomina. The studies carried out on the met people who went that death road, people from Cádiz who reached Malaga. They were refugees there, and from there they went to Almeria, and then from Almeria they traveled to Murcia, and we've met people in Barcelona, in Girona, and from there the exile. So thank you very much, Professor Quirosa, for your words. You've always been working in the researching with the aim of having a greater knowledge in these tragic events that somehow in a very clear, evident way, explain why people had to flee, why they had to run away, why this exodus took place. We are in the face of the first great or mass exodus before the Second World War. We're talking about 100,000 people or more went from Malaga to Almeria. But many of them went from that city to the other one. But we had people from many villages and also villages in Granada, you know, running from the possible arrival of Franco troops. So thank you very much for everybody who's taking part in this action. Also, the presence of the Council of Vicar, also Mr. Gutierrez Salinas, who's been here, a very, very sensitive person. And he is also a spokesperson in the Congress, and it's very important to have the representation not only of the government of Spain, but also a representation of the Congress, because that's one of the powers. And in this case, well, in the legal sphere, we don't have anybody here, but well, at least we are here. We wanted to talk about the main priority axis of this new democratic memory. Before we were talking about the new paradigms that mark this memory. This has all been very much remodeled in the last 20 years, the topic of memory. And it's all been marked by an idea. And the idea is that this memory has its anchor in great paradigms of human rights, the great contemporary paradigms that want to preserve these human rights. And it's important to see that this is anchored in one of the great paradigms of these of the legal scope at an international level, which is truth, justice, and the need for memory and the guarantee of no repetition of that memory. So it is important to highlight how from the civil war and the global conflicts that have affected Europe in the 20th century, and from the Holocaust especially, this democratic memory has become a moral imperative that we have to pay attention to for so that we don't have so that we don't forget, or to neutralize this policy of forgetting, and also so that we stop the repetition of that memory. Some of the most tragic episodes of the history of Spain. And this firm commitment, the mayor mentioned it before, with the pedagogy of never again, that has become something fundamental in democratic societies in the whole problem, in the whole world. Our sector is a sector around which these policies of these memory policies have to be articulated, not only from the point of view of the isolation from a historical and political framework, because that would lead us to a memory roundabout that leads nowhere. So we have to create the design of these memory policies in Spain around, as I said before, first of all, it has to be strictly related to memorial transnational policies with the same axis of the preservation of the most important feature contemporary features, which is the preservation of human rights. Not only that, but also, and it's important to take this into account, to make it possible to have a democratic pedagogy so that those sad past events or even tetric events, so that those things that we lived through not only in Spain but in Europe with the worst episodes of that past, so that they do not take place again. So those great paradigms of transnational justice, of these judicial system, international system, truth, justice, and the guarantee of no repetition. So around all of that, we have the new law of memory, or memory law, which has been passed by the government of Spain on the 15th of September. If we take as a reference I'm sorry, but we didn't mention the interpreter for a second. Those international law paradigms. First of all, we can say that we modify the law of the year 7 and a profound transformation of that law with the international requirements that international humanitarian organizations have shown for the government of Spain for many years. So these recommendations and those requirements have made it possible to link this to the idea of the memory as an international scale and human rights as an international scale for the articulation of this law. And it's also true that ideas have made it possible. We've had a lot of autonomous legislation. Many parliament initiatives have reached us as well. In this case, are related to this memory movement, and that is essential for the law of democratic memory. So the main things that are new is that victims are at the center of public action, are at the core of politics, and they do that through the condemning the coup d'état of July 36 against a legitimate and constitutional government, and also Franco's dictatorship. And it gets condemned, and this is the first time that in an expositive part of a law there is this condemnation. So the victims are at the core of the political action. Secondly, this law doesn't only say that this all was illegitimate, but it rules as null the court sentences. We're talking about political responsibilities. We're talking about the special repression of Masonry and communism, etc. The public order one, etc. So this in the nullity of those sentences, and that's a requirement that you've been making for a long time. And this has been this is taking place for many years, these last 13 years. There is something else which is new. There will be a presentation on La Desbandá and women will have a transcending role in law. Also, it will be transversal because they will be part of the of politics, but also from the cultural and intellectual point of view, but also from the point of view of the repression that they had to go through. A repression was not only political, but because of being the mother or the daughter or the wife of those linked to left parties. And it's also for being women, they had another kind of repression added, but they have a very essential and transversal role, as I said before. And finally, there is the recognition of the movement of democratic memory, a recognition of everything that the requirement has meant from the end of the 20th century and the 21st century. We will have a General Council of Memory with the participation and the representation of this memorialist movement, of the associative movement of the memory. And what are the novelties of this paradigm? Well, justice, reparation, and the guarantee of no repetition in relationship to in relation, sorry, to what you've been working with, the getting to know of the truth of what happened in relation to this event, La Desbandá. The disappearances, you know, still not knowing where cadavers could be, and of the whole process. And there's been quite a lot of research, but we will continue to promote it. And this topic is fundamental, the topic of the truth. But it's also something that the state has to take action with. It's not only a social thing, it's a matter of the state and the administration. We want to talk about because dealing with the grave, with these common graves, is something that family members have had to deal with, but the state has to lead it, because there would be a law saying that the process of these common graves will be led by the government. When talking about autonomous communities and the administration, which will deal with this exhumation topic and democratic memory. So from the passing of the law, the state will be leading it. International organisms have talked about it, but also the memorialist movement has required that. What are we having? Well, we're having a shock plan for exhumations. And we had a line so that associations and other non-profitable entities could be part of this process of vaccination, and also other research projects and conferences, a forum or events like this one. But in 15 or 20 days, hopefully we will be able to offer these subsidies, and a good percentage of these subsidies are devoted to that. And in relation to the councils, we have reached an agreement so that the exhumations of the different municipalities are dealt with. So we are moving more than 1,100,000 euros for exhumations in this shock plan. We will have a second phase for a national plan of exhumation of graves, and this will be led by the state. So we will try to deal with these exhumations and these in the mass disappearances and people. We always take number as a reference, 114,000 people in these mass graves. And I'm saying that there were 114,000 or more. But what happens is that at this time, it's very difficult to recover them. Well, because many of those mass graves do not exist. Studies that these Paranzavi society with forensic equipment, very specialized one. Studies that show that we could recover around 20 or 25,000. We're talking about mass graves that do not exist because, 100 years have gone by. Sometimes they were next to rivers and roads, and they just took it to the common grave, or on top of those common graves had other graves. And there were exhumations without telling the family members, and those bodies of Republicans were taken to the Valle de los Caídos, and we got to know that there could be something like 12,000 people there. During the transition, exhumations were carried out at the beginning of the transition, and especially from the year 2000 up to now. And 777 mass graves have been exhumated with more than 9,500 cadavers, and we've been able to identify 1/3 of them. So this is a 4-year plan so that we can face the topic of the exhumation of mass graves in Spain. There is another reivindication, which is the creation of a national DNA deposit, genetic identification, and it's included in the same budget. It's included in the law. It's important for the knowledge of the truth and the preservation of the documentation of the civil war and the dictatorship, and free access to them. And if there are obstacles to get rid of them, for example, the law of official secrets. So there are elements for the knowledge of truth which are very much linked to your job and your research on La Desbandá. There is a second matter, which is justice. The first, when we talk about justice, we talk about guaranteeing the research of the violation of human rights during the civil war and the dictatorship. We guarantee the right to research. That's something that never appeared. We're dealing with something that is useful to see the analysis of justice. This law will be interpreted according to international treaties which have been ratified by Spain, and that's one of the main principles. What does that mean? Well, that means that all international treaties and human rights treaties are more important than any kind of legislation, and that's how it's been established. So the law will be interpreted from that point of view. Thirdly, we will have a special organization for all the claims for human rights violations, and they will be channeled through this. And if this prosecutor considers that it's a crime, that will be taken to the next instance. The legal of international justice, and many people in Spain have they have the Argentinian claim. Okay, these people in Spain have had access to this Argentinian claim, which is related to if you want to go to international justice, that's okay, but there is another path which is open here. The compensation. I have to say something regarding compensation. I'm sorry, but the sound is not reaching the interpreter properly. For 40 years, there was an economic and symbolic compensation through studies like the general course and most of all had a day to remember the victims. And those but the Republican victims, once in the institutional regime, they were invisible, they were criminalized, and those victims were stigmatized as, red. And so there is an unfair treatment of victims. Some are compensated and others are stigmatized and criminalized, and they're taken out of the public sphere. So that situation goes on for 40 years. In the Congress, I had the possibility to talk about the right wing, saying, you talk about victims, but for 40 years, the only victims that were compensated were the victims of those winning, but the victims of those who fought to keep a constitutional regime, the Second Republic regime, were forgotten about. Democracy has the moral duty of compensating them too, like with the victims of these road from Malaga to Almeria, or the so-called death road. Compensation. Well, any compensation is not enough, but the Spanish democracy will win and will be more a higher quality one if this compensation takes place. It is true that in the years of the transition, there was some compensation and there was a parenthesis later on. And then we have this memory movement at the end of the 21st century. And then we have the exhumations and compensation. And for the first time, the dictatorship is condemned. Until 2002, that hadn't been condemned. And as a result of this vindication of this memory movement, we have the law year 2000, which is a historical law with Zapatero, which is a step forward. Why? Because before we had partial compensation, like economic compensations, but we didn't have a public policy on memory. And with Zapatero's law, we had integrated public policies for the reconnaissance of those who hadn't been acknowledged, and the acknowledgement of Republican victims, that we had exhumations and research studies. So also an office with a mass grave mapping, and there is a budget in many years of Zapatero's government. And when we had the Popular Party in 2012, there was still some budget, but from 2013 to 2018, his President Mariano Rajoy, he said that memory budget was €0, and he sort of laughed about that somehow. The budget of this year is 11 million, more than 11 million euros to preserve the democratic memory. 60% devoted to the mass grave plan exhumation that I talked about before. So the topic of reparation and the handing of documents by the state and so that they can be taken to their family members. And the declaration of acknowledgement and reparation. This is one of the most emotional events that we've had in Almeria. We had one with the previous Ministry of Justice, Delgado, and one of the most emotional events that we have taken place. Most of the room was highly, it was so emotional for all of them when we talked about the compensation of those victims. And one of the things that caught my attention in this compensation act in Madrid, we gave a declaration to a person whose parent had been killed, and he was taken to El Valle de los Caídos without any consent or anything. When we gave it to him, he started crying, but he recovered. We had Dolores Delgado there as well. And his declaration of acknowledgement of my father, I will photocopy it many times. First of all, I will put one in the mass grave where he was put, but I will put it all around the village for them to know that my father was executed and he was not a criminal. He was a teacher that showed about modernization and democratic regeneration of this country. So imagine what that document meant for him. So we have to hold many events of this kind, these moral and compensation, justice, truth. And the organizers of this event talked about the memory, the guarantee of reparation and compensation to strengthen our democracy so that events are not repeated, events from our past. And so reading memory and the law that has to reach the school. La Desbandá has to be known in schools, and it has to be looked at in ESO, Bachillerato, and initial plans for the training of teachers so that they can take it to schools and high schools. And those studying for a public examination, they have to know about it as well. And that would have to be part of it. So all civil servants have to get to know what this is. Also the creation of places of memory. Different kinds of places for memory, and those paths. There is that great path of memory, and we have to see because that's one of the most important events, not only in the history of Spain but also Europe. We will talk about the Valle de los Caídos as well, because we wanted to have a democratic literature, and if we can, we will try to hand the cadavers to those who are requiring them and claiming them. And sooner than later, we will have to try to find all these people, and so that we can hand them to their family members. And all those elements that are contrary to democratic memory. Of course, some titles given during Franco's dictatorship. Those who were directing different actions. Also, something as important as a sanctioning system. And some villages, are called with the name of these directors. So there are fines from 200 to 150,000 euros. So nobody can break a term in a piece of memory or destroy a memory place. And all of that will have a sanction. And they just, paint in red Largo Caballero statues or Prieto in Madrid. And well, that's okay, but we have to penalize all these kinds of things. If, for example, a gravestone or a plaque for the monument to the Almeria victims in the exterminium Mannhausen field, and of course that will be sanctioned and penalized. In a democratic society, we cannot have an apology of Frankism. That's one of our claims and demands. We cannot have an organization that is doing that. The law has the great paradigms of human rights, and they just want to repair the fairness, and we just want to go deeper into democracy, and the law is asking to get to know the truth, the justice, the compensation, and the state in this case, together with the whole of the society, has the duty to offer this memory. Because I want to say something, this is a moral duty of the Spanish politics to get to know what happened, and also to avoid repeating mistakes from the past. And something very important, we need to neutralize this policy of forgetting, because without the memory, we have no present and no future. We're not talking about looking back at the past. And you've been working on taking elements of analysis to face the present for and a society in which there is a democracy at the core of which there is no option for forgetting and oblivion. Thank you very much, Fernando. It is a pleasure to have here. It is a pleasure to have you here and, get to know the lines of action of this policy of democratic memory. Well, now we have some time for questions, question answer, and we're going to stop for a little while. I'm sorry, but I'm receiving the sound properly. I'm sorry, but the sound's not reaching the interpreting booth. Well, the first time that the violation of human rights during the Civil War and Franco regime, that's happened in the Constitutional Commission on the 20th of November of 2002. And then in an official meeting. So that was the first time that it happened. Quite logically, if you read the law, the draft of it and the introduction of it, there is a condemnation of Frankism of the year 2007. With this law, apart from this condemnation of this apology of Frankism, so this shows the dispositive part of it. So when somebody reads the law, they would have to see what the main aims and the main objectives of this law are. There are 3 points. One being memory, also the individual fight and collective fight for main freedom and liberties in democracy through history. Secondly, the compensation of all the repression and everything that happened during this Franco regime. And thirdly, the objective would be showing a rejection of the military coup of this Franco regime. So that's the important step forward, which is being given in relation to other legal issues that existed before. And also an analysis is carried out on what this condemnation has been with the Council of Europe and what the crimes were, the crimes committed by Franco regime. So all of that is part of the law for all of you who want to have, if you want, once it's all been approved by the official state law, then you will have access to that if you want to. I'm sorry, but the sound is not reaching the interpreter appropriately. I am a secondary school teacher, I think he said, and we carried out an act in the high school, and to the kids we told them what happened, and it was very peculiar because we've seen in Rincón de la Victoria that every year we have many students whose grandparents were there, and they've known about it because they have commented on it at home. So they've known about it years later, and they have told them about the whole story. And only thanks to the political responsibility that you have, I wanted to offer you a proposal by a kid. I'm sorry, but the interpreter is not receiving the sound properly. We have a festivity of the Virgin of Carmen, and they say this has to be a festivity in which we commemorate in a memorialistic way this event, this history. Sound, we're not receiving the sound, sorry. Well, thank you for that idea. We have to think that within the law of democratic memory, we talk about dissemination and also the organization of commemorative acts like the one that we are commemorating here. There are several days established, 31st of October, and also the 8th of May, which is the memory of the exile, the Spanish exile. And this is linked to another idea, and it's that this Spanish memory is linked to the European memory. And those men and women fought in the global on the World War, those who fought against the German troops, they said in Europe, on the 8th of May, we have today the commemoration of the Day of the Victory. So that's why we took the 8th of May as a date, so that we see the link between Spanish memory and democratic European memory. Because of this memory. And I think the proposal of your student is really interesting. And we could maybe propose it as a national level, and act in the road of what happened in the road of Malaga, because it's got an important autonomous community component. And our idea, when doing this exhibition on La Desbandá, our idea is for it to get to be known everywhere. I was asking in the budget commission yesterday, and I asked Desbandá, and well, we don't know. We're talking about politicians here, and I had to tell them about what happened and why we were preparing this great exhibition for next year. So it is a proposal that can be taken to the corresponding level of the autonomous community of Andalusia and the of Desbandá. I'm sorry, but we're not receiving the sounds. We're not receiving the sound for the interpretation. We have the whole measures in the framework of the legal system, the future law of democratic memory. But it's something that the European representative that talked before put on the table. This is the neo-fascism in Europe and Spain. The representative of Vox, they had a negating thought like, well, that didn't exist, etc. But they said something that, it's like this, the ideal of Franco regime. They were after the war finished in the years in post-war years. They said, well, we have to rethink for that to happen, and to offer the elements that make the defense of this democratic memory possible. Because as we said before, this democratic memory is something that has to have an international approach, not only a Spanish approach. And we have to work in the framework, in the background of human rights and humankind. That is the key element. And with that, we have to be very pedagogical. This memory cannot stay among you. It's so across society for them to see that it's something that belongs to them. So we have to make it very pedagogical. And of course, we have to disseminate, like you're doing here, all of that. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And to finish, well, Mr. Mayor, we wanted to hand you here this, which is our symbol of the road, the death road. And this is the path, the great route of La Desbandá. And this is for you as for you to remember all of this. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we will start with the opening conference in 5 minutes. 5 minutes break we've got here.